The rusted shuttle groaned as wind scraped dust across its hull. Sunlight poured through the cracked doorway, blinding Cale as he stepped inside with his hands raised high, palms open. Heat radiated from the desert floor behind him, shimmering like a living thing. Inside the wreck's shadow, the air felt cooler but tense, charged with something that wasn't just fear. A small blue-skinned figure stood before him, barefoot, trembling, but her stance was firm. The spear she held was a patchwork of scavenged metal, shards of alien crystal lashed together with cloth strips. The point pressed against his throat hard enough to draw a shallow bead of blood. Her eyes, gold, bright, and furious, never blinked. Beside her on the floor lay another like her, older, wrapped in torn fabric, her chest rising weakly with each shallow breath. "Don't move," the young one hissed, voice shaking but fierce. Cale froze. "All right," he said carefully. "Not moving." His voice was rough from the desert wind, but calm, almost gentle. "You're protecting her. Good. You should." The girl's grip tightened on the spear. "You talk too much, human." He swallowed, feeling the tip scrape his skin. "Probably," he said. "But it keeps me alive." The wind moaned through the shuttle's broken hull, carrying the dry scent of metal and salt. Cale glanced around slowly. The inside was stripped bare, no working panels, no supplies left intact except a single medbag on the floor near the door. It bore a faded red cross, half buried in sand. "You hurt her?" the girl demanded. "No," he said. "I found her outside. Heat stroke, dehydration. I carried her in." "Liar." "You can check," he said, nodding toward the body. "She's breathing." For a heartbeat, the girl's focus wavered. Her spear dipped slightly before she caught herself, glaring harder. "Why help?" she asked. Cale hesitated. "Because someone helped me once." "You're human," she spat. "You destroy everything you touch." He exhaled slowly. "Sometimes," he said. "But not today." The girl's arms trembled. Her knuckles were scraped raw, the skin beneath the blue pigment bruised. Cale could tell she hadn't eaten in days. Her clothes were little more than rags, stitched leather and woven cloth tied together with wire. The defiance in her eyes was sharp, but beneath it he saw exhaustion. Fear. Love. "What's her name?" he asked softly, nodding to the older one. The girl said nothing. "Sister." "You don't get to speak her name," she said. "All right," he said. "I'll just call her Fighter. Looks like she's been through plenty." "She saved me," the girl said. "From your kind." "Then she's strong," Cale said. "And you are too." The silence stretched until the girl's breathing steadied. Cale used it to study her more closely. She couldn't have been more than 12 by human standards. Her features were sharper than human ones, slightly elongated ears, faint bioluminescent veins running beneath her skin, dim in the daylight but visible near her collarbone. "You don't belong here," she said. "No one does," Cale replied. "Not since the wars." Her brow furrowed. "What war?" He blinked. "How long have you been out here?" She didn't answer. He nodded toward the medbag. "Can I help her?" The spear tip pressed harder. "Touch her and I kill you." "I believe you," he said. "But if I don't, she dies anyway." "Then she dies free." Cale's jaw clenched. He'd heard that same sentence before, spoken by a commander years ago, just before they'd burned an entire colony to keep it from falling into enemy hands. "Maybe," he said. "But maybe she lives free instead." The girl hesitated again. Her sister groaned faintly, head rolling toward the sound of their voices. Cale saw his chance. "Look," he said quietly. "I'll open the kit. Nothing else. You can watch." She frowned. "Slowly." "Slowly," he agreed. He crouched, every movement deliberate, keeping his eyes on hers. The floor creaked under his weight. He opened the medbag, revealing half-melted tools, a few sealed packets, and one intact injector. "Water first," he said, lifting a small flask. "You can give it to her." "I said don't move," she snapped. "Then you do it," he said. "She needs water." Her eyes flicked to her sister, then back to him. After a long pause, she stepped closer, snatched the flask from his hand, and knelt. Sand clung to her hair and skin. She tilted the flask to her sister's lips, trembling. The older woman coughed, swallowing weakly. Kale let out a slow breath. "What's your name?" he asked softly. "Don't have one anymore," she said. "Everyone has one," he said. "Even if you don't say it out loud. You think names make people real. I think names remind people who they are." She glared at him. "You talk like an elder." "I'm just old," he said. "Not wise." Her sister stirred again, her breathing shallow but steadier. The girl kept her hand on the spear but didn't raise it. "You can't stay here," Kale said. "The sun's rising higher. This wreck will cook by noon. We'll move when she wakes." "She won't wake if she burns first." Something in his tone made her flinch. He hadn't meant to sound harsh, but urgency sharpened his words. He pointed toward the open salt flats beyond the doorway. "There's a ridge 2 clicks west," he said. "Cooler air pockets, some cover. I've got a rover hidden there. It's safe." "You think I'll go with you?" "I think you'll go wherever she needs to go," he said. "And right now, that's out of this oven." The girl's jaw tightened. "If you try to trick us, you'll kill me," he finished. "Yeah, I got that part." For a long time, the only sound was the wind moaning through the hull. Then she spoke. "You carry her," she said. "But if you drop her, I know," he said. "I won't." Kale moved carefully to the fallen sister. Her skin was burning hot to the touch, pulse faint. He lifted her gently, feeling the tremor in her body. "Light," he murmured. "You both barely weigh anything." The girl followed close behind, spear still in hand, watching every step. Outside, the sunlight stabbed his eyes. The flats stretched endlessly, miles of cracked white salt, shimmering under the twin suns. The heat was merciless. "Stay close," he said. The girl didn't answer. They walked for an hour before reaching the first rocks. Kale found a shallow overhang and laid the older sister down in the shade. The girl crouched beside her immediately, brushing dust from her skin. "She needs cooling," Kale said. "Her body's overheating. I've got synthcloth in my pack." He reached into his bag slowly, pulling out thin metallic fabric that shimmered faintly in the light. He poured a few drops of water over it, the surface glowing pale blue. "Here," he said, handing it over. "Wrap her chest." The girl hesitated, then did as he said. The cloth hissed faintly, drawing heat away from the woman's skin. Her breathing eased. Kale exhaled, letting the tension in his shoulders drop. "Good," he said. "That's good." The girl looked up. "You saved her." "Not yet," he said. "She'll need real care soon." "Where?" "An outpost. Old Human 1. I keep it running. Medbay still works." "You live there alone?" "Mostly," he said. "Sometimes the ghosts talk back." "You're strange." "I've been told worse." She studied him for a long time. "Why help us?" she asked again. "Because once," he said quietly, "someone aimed a weapon at me and didn't use it. I've been trying to earn that mercy ever since." The girl's expression softened, just slightly. She glanced down at her sister, then at the horizon. "If she dies," she said, "I'll still kill you." "Fair," he said. "But let's try to avoid that." By dusk, the air had cooled. They made a small camp under the ridge. Kale started a fire with old plasma rods, the flame burning pale blue. The girl sat opposite him, spear across her knees. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dark. "You really don't have a name?" he asked. She hesitated. "Sorry," she said finally. "That's what she calls me." "It suits you." "It's a child's name." "Then maybe it's time to grow into it." Sari looked at him for a long time. "And you?" "Kale," he said. "Old word. Means the stubborn one." She gave a small, reluctant smile. "Accurate." They sat in silence, the fire crackling softly. Beyond the ridge, the salt flats shimmered beneath a rising moon. The world felt still, waiting. Kale looked at the two sisters, one sleeping, one watching him with wary eyes, and wondered when he had last seen anything worth protecting. The desert wind howled again, carrying faint echoes of movement far off in the dark. Sari's head snapped up. "Raiders," she whispered. Kale's hand went to his rifle. "How many?" "Too many." Her voice was calm now, steady. "They always come when the lights burn." Kale extinguished the fire with a sweep of sand. "Get her up," he said. "We move." "She can't walk." "Then I carry her again." "You'll slow us." "I'm used to that." As they packed quickly, the sound grew louder, engines whining, metal grinding. Kale's stomach turned cold. He'd heard that noise before. Raiders. Slavers. Worse. Sari gripped her spear tighter, eyes glowing like molten gold. "If they take her," she said, "I'll make them choke on their own blood." Kale looked at her, then at the approaching lights. "Let's make sure they never get the chance." They fled into the darkness, the desert alive with noise and motion. Behind them, engines screamed across the flats, beams of light slicing through the sandstorm rising around them. Kale carried the older sister close, his breath ragged. Sari ran beside him, small but swift, her spear gleaming with reflected firelight. For the first time in years, Kale felt something burn inside him that wasn't fear or regret. It was purpose. And it had golden eyes. The desert roared with engines. Sand exploded into the air as the raiders tore across the flats, their vehicles armored with scavenged plating and flickering plasma torches. Kale could hear the shrill wail of their sirens, a sound meant to break the spirit before the body. He kept running, his boots sinking into soft salt and his lungs burning from the heat. The woman in his arms was unconscious but breathing, her skin feverish. Beside him, Sari darted through the haze like a shadow, her small feet barely leaving prints. Kale reached the ridge line, his mind racing. "Down!" he shouted. Sari dove into a shallow ditch just as a plasma bolt seared the air above them, cutting a molten groove into the sand. Kale slid in after her, the impact driving the air from his chest. "How many?" he asked between gasps. "5 riders," she said. "No, 6 now." She gripped her spear tighter, golden eyes glowing like fire. "They'll catch us." "Not if they don't see us," he said. He laid the woman gently on the ground, checked her pulse, then pulled a small device from his pack, a signal beacon with a cracked lens. He turned it until the red diode blinked weakly. "What is that?" Sari demanded. "Noise," Kale said. "The kind that buys time." He tossed the beacon into the dunes. A moment later, it emitted a piercing tone that bounced through the desert like a scream. The raiders swerved, engines howling as they turned toward the sound. Kale grabbed Sari's shoulder. "We move north," he said. "To the canyon." She hesitated, glancing toward her sister. "Can she make it?" "She'll have to." He lifted the woman again, his arms straining under the weight. "Let's go." They climbed the ridge, sand cascading beneath their feet. Every step was agony, heat, exhaustion, and the constant fear of being seen. The air shimmered with distortion, distant shapes twisted like ghosts in the sunlight. Kale's goggles fogged with sweat, and his breath rasped through dry lips. "How much farther?" Sari asked. "Half a click," he said. "There's cover there." She nodded, expression hardening. "Then I'll make sure they never follow." Before he could stop her, she turned and sprinted down the slope toward the raiders. "Sari," he shouted. The girl didn't answer. She planted her spear into the sand, twisted the crystal haft, and the blade ignited in a burst of blue light. The shockwave knocked dust into the air, masking her completely. Kale cursed under his breath. He couldn't go after her, not without dropping the woman. He reached the canyon entrance, half collapsing behind a rock outcropping. He laid the older sister down gently, her breathing shallow but steady. In the distance, thunder cracked, the sound of plasma fire. Kale closed his eyes, gripping the rifle on his back. He'd promised himself he wouldn't fight again, not after what happened at the outpost. But promises didn't mean much when children bled. Minutes crawled by before he saw her. Sari stumbled out of the dust, spear smoking, hair matted with sand and sweat. Kale ran to her, catching her as she nearly collapsed. "You insane little," he stopped when he saw her expression. Calm. Fierce. "They're gone," she said quietly. "All of them. The desert took what I missed." Her voice was small, but her eyes burned. "They won't come again." Cale looked past her at the horizon. In the distance, smoke rose where the raiders had been. "You did that?" She nodded once. "With what?" "What she taught me," Sari said, nodding toward her sister. "And what the sand remembers." He studied her, uncertain whether she meant it literally. "You're not ordinary, are you?" "No one is ordinary where the storms are born," she said. They made camp beneath the canyon's shadow. The air was cooler here, echoing faintly with dripping moisture from somewhere deep underground. Cale cleaned the worst of his wounds, then turned his attention to the woman. Her fever had broken, but her pulse was weak. Sari knelt beside her, eyes soft for the first time since he'd met her. "She was strong," she whispered. "She still is," Cale said. He used his last vial of medgel on her wounds. The blue fluid hissed as it touched her skin, forming a thin crystalline layer over the cuts. "This will keep infection out," he said. "It'll sting." "She's felt worse," Sari murmured. Cale nodded. "So have I." Night fell slowly. The twin suns sank below the dunes, painting the world in deep amber light. Sari sat cross-legged beside her sister, humming softly, a strange, wordless tune that seemed to vibrate in the air. Cale leaned against the canyon wall, listening. "What's that song?" he asked. "An old one," she said. "From before the ships fell." "Ships? Our people came from the sky too," she said. "Long ago. But the storms ate the stars." He stared at her, realizing how little he knew of this world. "You mean there are more of you?" "Were," she said. "The wars took most. The rest hid. We learned to listen to the sand. It keeps secrets." "You're saying the desert talks?" "Not in words," she said. "But in memory. The ground remembers everything that dies on it." Cale's gaze drifted to the sleeping woman. "And she? She remembers too much." Sari looked up, her expression unreadable. "You don't understand," she said quietly. "That cage they put on her, it wasn't just iron. It was meant to hold something inside. Like a prison. Like a god," Sari whispered. "And you broke it." Cale froze. "What are you talking about?" "When you touched her collar," she said. "It glowed red, didn't it? You thought it was a weapon, but it wasn't. It was a seal. You freed her, and whatever was inside her." Cale's pulse quickened. "You're saying she's dangerous?" "She's dying," Sari said. "That's when it wakes." The wind outside howled through the canyon like a living thing. Cale glanced toward the entrance, then back at the sisters. "You think she'll survive?" "If she does," Sari said softly, "you won't." The words hung between them. Cale rubbed his face, exhaustion pressing down on him. "Then we make sure she doesn't die," he said. "Not yet." They didn't sleep. The night was filled with strange sounds, whispers carried on the wind, the crackle of energy deep beneath the sand. Cale kept the rifle in his lap, scanning the shadows. At dawn, the older sister stirred. Her eyes opened, gold, luminous, and wrong. The air shimmered. Cale felt the temperature drop. His skin prickled. Sari leaned over her sister, whispering in their language, but the woman's gaze fixed on Cale. "You touched the seal," she said, voice low and distorted. "You broke the quiet." "I saved your life," he said. "No," she whispered. "You unmade it." The ground trembled. Sand cascaded from the canyon walls. Cale stumbled back as a pulse of light erupted from her body, scattering debris. "Sari," he shouted. The girl shielded her eyes. "She's not awake," she screamed. "It's the thing inside her." Cale gritted his teeth and lunged forward, grabbing the medpack. He pulled out the last injector, stabilizer compound from the outpost wars. He pressed it to her arm and fired. The light flared, then dimmed. The woman gasped, her chest heaving, then fell limp again. Silence returned. Sari looked up at him, trembling. What did you do? Put it back to sleep, he said. For now. You had that old habit, he said. Never travel without something that can shut down a god. For a long moment, neither spoke. The sun crept higher, painting the canyon in blood and gold. What happens when it wakes again? Sari asked. Then we figure out what it wants, he said. And if we can stop it. You can't stop what was made before your kind learned fire, she said. Maybe not, he said. But humans are good at impossible things. Sari stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she nodded. If you lie, she said, I'll finish what I started. Deal, he said. They gathered their supplies. Kale adjusted the straps on his pack, glancing one last time at the canyon. We head north, he said. There's a place called the Sanctum. Old research hub. Maybe someone there knows how to fix this. And if they don't, then I build something that can. As they set out across the flats, the sun rose like a burning coin above the horizon. Behind them, the canyon shuddered once more. A faint echo rolled through the desert, low, rhythmic, like a heart beginning to beat again. Sari looked back, her voice barely a whisper. It remembers you now. Kale didn't answer. He kept walking, the heat rising around them like breath. Somewhere beneath the sand, something ancient stirred. The wind never stopped on the salt flats. It screamed and whispered by turns, carrying the sound of memories long buried beneath the dunes. Kale led the way, each step crunching on the brittle crust of the earth. Behind him, Sari followed silently, her eyes always flicking between the horizon and the unconscious form of her sister wrapped in cooling cloth. The suns climbed high, burning white through the thin sky. Kale's back ached beneath the weight of his pack, but he didn't slow. He had a plan, though calling it that was generous, it was more of a desperate hope wrapped in a lie he kept telling himself. By midday, the heat shimmered so thickly that the horizon blurred into liquid. Kale stopped by a cluster of jagged rocks that rose like broken teeth from the flats. Rest, he said. Sari ignored him at first, still kneeling beside her sister, checking her pulse. She's stable, he said softly. You're not. She finally relented, sitting back on her heels, still clutching the spear. You said the sanctum's close, she said. Closer than the sun, he replied. But it's underground. You'll see it when we reach the scar. The scar. Old impact crater, he said. Used to be a research pit. Now it's home. Home, she muttered. You humans have strange ideas about homes. He smiled faintly. That we do. He reached into his pack, pulling out a ration bar and breaking it in half. He offered a piece to her, but she didn't move. Eat, he said. You'll need it. What's in it? Mostly regret, he said. And protein. Her lips twitched, almost a smile, but she took it anyway. Tastes like sand, she said after a bite. That's how you know it's good. They sat in silence, the only sound the sighing wind. Kale's mind drifted to what she'd said the night before, about the collar being a seal. About gods. He'd seen plenty of strange tech in the war, things that blurred the line between machine and divinity. But this was different. When he'd touched that collar, he'd felt something inside it pulse back, like it recognized him. Like it was waiting. Sari's voice pulled him back. You're thinking too loud. He blinked. Sorry. It's all right, she said. Just, when you think about her, the air changes. He frowned. Changes how? Feels heavier, she said. Like the ground's listening. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. They both knew she wasn't wrong. They moved again by late afternoon, skirting the edge of the flats until the land dipped into a vast shadow. The crater yawned before them, miles wide, its edges jagged and steep. At the center, the ground glimmered faintly blue beneath layers of dust and shattered glass. Kale exhaled in relief. We're here. Sari stared down. That's the sanctum. That's the roof, he said. The rest's buried deep. They descended carefully along a fractured slope, the loose stones sliding beneath their boots. At the base lay what had once been a landing platform, now half swallowed by sand. Rusted support beams jutted from the ground like ribs. Kale led them to a sealed hatch embedded in the rock. The keypad was ancient, its screen flickering faintly. He brushed away dust, then pressed a sequence of numbers. The hatch gave a low groan before unlocking with a hiss. "Still works," he murmured. "Told you, old habits." Sari hesitated at the threshold. "If this is a trap, you'll kill me," he said. "Yeah, I know. Come on." The air inside was cool and stale, carrying the faint tang of ozone. The corridor beyond was lit by strips of dim white light embedded in the walls. "Power grid's still alive," Kale said. "That's a good sign." "This place feels wrong," Sari said. "Everything human does," he replied. They carried her sister deeper into the facility. The walls shifted from metal to smooth alloy, etched with unreadable text. "This used to be a xenobiology lab," Kale explained. "They studied everything they didn't understand, and tried to own it." "Like her?" Sari asked. He didn't answer. They reached a chamber with a functioning medpod. Kale laid the woman inside, connecting the pod's lines to her wrists and temples. The screen flickered to life, displaying data in fractured glyphs. "Vitals low," Kale murmured. "Neural spikes, off the charts." "What does that mean?" Sari asked. "It means something inside her is still fighting." "Then help her win." "I'm trying." Hours passed. The pod's light pulsed slowly, casting blue reflections across their faces. Sari sat nearby, never blinking, never relaxing. Kale busied himself repairing an old terminal, his hands shaking from exhaustion. "Why risk this?" she asked suddenly. "You could have left us in the desert." "Could have," he said. "Didn't." "You want something." "Yeah," he said quietly. "A reason." She studied him, frowning. "A reason for what?" "To keep living," he said. "Sometimes that's harder than dying." Before she could respond, the pod let out a sharp tone. Kale spun around. The woman's body was rigid, her eyes open, but the light in them was wrong again. The air hummed. Sari jumped to her feet. "No," she whispered. "Not now." Kale's hands flew over the controls, but the pod didn't respond. The lights in the room flickered, dimmed, then pulsed in rhythm with the woman's breathing. A low vibration filled the chamber, deep enough to rattle their bones. Kale grabbed Sari's arm. "Get back. She'll be scared." "That's not her." The pod shattered in a burst of light and sound. Kale was thrown backward into the wall. Sparks rained down. When he looked up, the woman was standing, her body glowing faintly from within. The air rippled around her like heat haze. Sari cried out and ran forward, but Kale caught her. "No." The woman's gaze turned toward them, gold, then white, then something beyond both. When she spoke, her voice was layered, as if dozens were speaking through her. "This world is dying," she said. "You cannot fix what was meant to end." Kale's throat went dry. "Who are you?" "The memory," she said. "The seal held me so I would not remember. But now I do." Sari trembled. "Sister." "Child," the voice said, softer now. "You should not have survived. You were born of what I was meant to forget." "What does that mean?" Kale demanded. "She's your daughter." The woman looked at him, and for a heartbeat, the god voice faltered. "I was her world," she said quietly, "before yours burned it." The air crackled with energy. Kale felt every hair on his body stand up. "Listen," he said, raising his hands. "Whatever you are, whatever you were, this isn't your time. Let it go." "Let go," the voice echoed. "You bound the stars in steel and call it mercy. You forget what came before." A wave of heat surged outward. The metal walls glowed red. Sari screamed as the floor cracked beneath them. Kale lunged forward, grabbing a nearby cable and jamming it into the power conduit. Electricity roared through the room. "You want memory," he shouted. "Then remember this, humans don't quit." The overload hit like a thunderclap. The light flared, then cut out completely. Silence fell. When Kale opened his eyes, he was lying on the floor. Smoke drifted through the room. The pod was gone. The woman was gone. Sari was crouched beside him, shaking his shoulder. "Kale," she whispered. "Wake up." "I'm awake," he groaned. "Just not happy about it." She helped him sit up. "Where is she?" "Gone," Sari said. "The light took her." "Gone where?" "Up," she said, pointing toward the ceiling. He followed her gaze. The roof was cracked open, sunlight pouring through a jagged hole. Kale pushed himself to his feet. "We're leaving," he said. "Now." "But, no arguments." "Kale, she's not dead," Sari said quietly. "I can feel her." "Then we move faster." They climbed out of the crater at dusk. The air was heavy, humming faintly with static. Sari walked behind him, silent, clutching her spear. When they reached the ridge, Kale turned to look back. The crater glowed faintly blue, like something alive beneath the earth. "She's awake," Sari said. "She's remembering everything you tried to bury." Kale looked at her, exhausted. "Then we find a way to make her forget again." Sari's expression hardened. "You can't cage her twice." "Watch me," he said. The wind rose again, carrying a whisper that wasn't wind at all. It spoke in her sister's voice. "You broke the seal, human. Now face what it held back." The words vibrated through the air, not loud but heavy, pressing against Kale's skull like iron bands. His vision blurred as the walls of the sanctum twisted and shimmered, the cracked lights on the ceiling pulsing in sync with the voice. Sari gripped her spear tighter, every muscle coiled and trembling. The unconscious woman stirred beside them, her chest rising and falling, faint blue light flickering beneath her skin. Kale's hands tightened around his rifle, but it felt suddenly useless, heavy as stone. The air around them thickened, like the atmosphere itself had become viscous, resisting movement. A crack formed along the floor beneath the pod's remains, and from it, a faint glow emerged. First a thin line, then wider, until a circular aperture split the ground like a wound in reality. Red and gold light spilled from it, blinding at first, burning patterns into Kale's retinas. Sari fell to one knee, shielding her eyes, but she didn't move from her position. "It's rising," she whispered. Kale's voice was hoarse. "Rising to what? What are we facing?" She shook her head. "Not us. Something older. Something it remembers." From the pit emerged shapes, shifting, metallic yet organic. They moved as if alive, skeletal frames gleaming with faintly luminescent runes. The largest took form first, a humanoid figure, impossibly tall, with jointed limbs ending in clawed appendages. Its face was smooth metal, fractured by glowing lines of crimson. Eyes like molten gold focused on Sari, then Kale, then the pod where her sister lay. Every movement it made sent tremors through the floor, the walls, even the air. Kale stumbled backward, dragging the unconscious woman with him. "This isn't possible," he muttered. The figure's voice was a vibration, low and resonant, filling the chamber and shaking their bones. "You awakened me. You touched the seal. You allowed memory to flow." Kale's mind screamed against the weight of it. "Memory is fire. Human. Child. Alien. Obey." "Not human anymore," Kale whispered. "Not by your standards." He raised his hands slowly, trying to project calm through the chaos. "We don't want to fight. We just want passage. Safe passage. That's all." The entity paused, tilting its head. The red lines in its body pulsed faster, reflecting uncertainty or curiosity. Sari shifted her stance, spear still poised. "It recognizes her," Kale said, nodding toward her sister. The light pulsing beneath her skin flared. "It doesn't understand what she is now," he continued. "Only what she was. You need to tell it what she is." The being's gaze narrowed, scanning the room like a predator mapping its prey. Sari's voice trembled but she stepped forward, spear lowered slightly. "It won't understand words," she said. "Then show it," Kale said, his voice gaining strength. "Show it choice, empathy, life." She looked at him, understanding the unspoken weight. She stepped closer to her sister, placing a hand on the glowing chest. The smaller pulses of light intensified, spreading outward in rhythmic waves, resonating with the red and gold energy of the entity. Kale felt a hum in his chest, familiar and strange at once. The floor shook violently. Dust fell from the ceiling as the entity extended its clawed hands, not toward them, but over the pod. Light arced from its fingers, connecting to the glow beneath the girl's skin. Sparks jumped in the air. Kale's heart pounded. "Brace her," he shouted, grabbing Sari's arm. "Hold on." They both knelt beside the pod, pressing against the woman as the energy flowed around them. The room became a kaleidoscope of red, gold, and blue as waves of force pulsed outward, bending light and reality. Kale closed his eyes. He could feel everything at once, the hum of the vault systems, the entity's ancient memory, the rhythm of life in the two girls beside him. His mind stretched and fought to contain the flow, every nerve screaming. "Focus," he whispered. "Focus on what matters." The words weren't just sound, they were command, anchor, and prayer. Sari repeated them softly, murmuring to the woman. The unconscious one stirred violently, golden eyes opening. The red and gold energy around the entity wavered, flickering under the surge of human intent. Directive incomplete. The entity's voice reverberated, deeper and colder. "You dare to redefine the seal?" Kale's hands shook. "I'm not redefining it. I'm teaching it," he said. "Teaching it what?" The room pulsed violently again. Choice. Mercy. That life is not simply a function to control. The entity recoiled slightly, the glow dimming as if resisting. Sari's eyes glowed brighter as she channeled her energy, connecting the young woman's consciousness to Kale's will. The unconscious woman gasped, her body convulsing gently. Sparks flared along the runes embedded in her veins. The vault hummed louder, responding to her awakening. Kale realized, with a shiver, that the entity was not simply observing, they were interacting. Every pulse, every flicker of light, mirrored the intent of the girl he carried and the one beside him. Sari's voice grew stronger, harmonizing with his own. "Life is not destruction. Life is choice." For a long, shattering moment, nothing happened. Then, the entity's form shuddered, a wave of crimson energy washing the chamber. Its voice quaked. "Error. Command conflict. Input corrupted." Kale felt it ripple through him, tugging at his mind, bending his perception. The floor cracked again beneath the weight of energy. Dust and small debris floated in the air, suspended in the pulse of light. Sari gritted her teeth, digging her spear into the floor to anchor herself. Kale looked down at the unconscious girl. "She's awake now," he whispered. The light beneath her skin flared into a soft white blue. The pulse synchronized with the room, pushing outward, wrapping around the entity like a gentle wave. Kale could feel it responding, not with aggression, but recognition. The entity recoiled, uncertainty evident in the tremor of its limbs. "It listens," he said quietly. "It's learning." Sari nodded slowly. "It's never seen mercy before." "Then show it," Kale said. "Not with weapons. With life." He extended his hands toward the young woman, channeling the steady rhythm of breath, heartbeats, and unspoken intent. The vault hummed in response. Cracks of red and gold bent, folded, and dissolved into spirals of violet. Light cascaded across the chamber, bathing everything in brilliance. The entity halted, limbs stiff, then slowly lowered its hands. The roar that had echoed moments before dissolved into silence. Kale felt his mind ache under the strain, but the pulse beneath his chest steadied. He collapsed to one knee, breathing hard. Sari knelt beside him, glowing faintly, her hand brushing the woman's hair. The unconscious girl sat up slowly, blinking golden eyes at them. "Where?" she whispered. "Safe," Sari said softly. "For now." The entity's form shimmered once more. Directive rewritten, preserve life. Its glow faded, leaving the vault quiet and still. Kale rose slowly, brushing dust from his arms. "We did it," he said softly. "For now," Sari replied, her voice steady but tired. The young woman looked between them, fear and awe mingling in her gaze. Kale gestured toward the exit. "We get her out before it wakes again," he said. "It won't forget what we did." Sari nodded. "It will remember mercy," she said. "Something it never knew." They moved through the ruined halls, careful to avoid the pulsing runes still faintly glowing in the walls. The air smelled of ozone and metal, heavy with the residue of power. Every step felt deliberate, careful. Kale could feel the pulse of the vault beneath his feet, synchronized with the breath of the young girl, and Sari's energy weaving through it all like a current. When they reached the surface, the suns had dipped low, casting elongated shadows across the salt flats. Kale set the young woman down gently. She tested her legs, wobbling at first, then standing fully. "Thank you," she whispered, voice shaking. Kale nodded. "Just stay with Sari. She'll keep you safe." Sari stepped forward, spear in hand, but lowered it when the girl reached for her. "We leave the vault behind," Kale said. "It's awake in memory only now." "And if it remembers wrong?" Sari asked. "Then we guide it," Kale said quietly. "That's what we do." They walked together across the flats. Behind them, the crater hummed faintly, a single pulse in the distance. Kale could feel it, but it no longer threatened. The vault had learned. They had taught it mercy. For the first time in years, the desert felt still, alive, and quiet. The three of them moved forward into the twilight, shadows long, hearts steady, intent clear. The storm of the past had passed, but the horizon whispered with possibilities. Kale's hand brushed against Sari's shoulder. "You did well," he said. "No," she corrected. "We did well." The wind carried their steps across the flats, soft now, filled with the pulse of life. The twin suns set behind them, bathing the world in amber and violet. Somewhere deep beneath the salt, a faint blue light remained, steady, waiting, watching, changed forever. They walked on, together, into the unknown. The desert night stretched endlessly, cold and alive, the twin moons casting long shadows across the salt flats. Kale led the group forward, his boots crunching on fractured crust, every sound amplified in the eerie stillness. Sari's spear gleamed faintly in the moonlight, her steps silent but precise. The young woman walked beside her sister, tentative but steady, golden eyes wide as she drank in the desert around them. Every gust of wind seemed to whisper warnings, carrying echoes of distant movement, and Kale's nerves hummed in response. The hum from beneath the vault still lingered faintly in the air, a pulse in sync with the girl's combined presence. "Where now?" Sari asked, her voice quiet but sharp. Kale paused, scanning the horizon. The distant ridges marked the edge of the flats, jagged and black under the moonlight. "The ravine," he said. "It's narrow, easy to hide in, with caves along the sides. We can rest there, plan next moves." Sari's eyes narrowed. "If they follow?" Kale shook his head. "They won't. Not yet. And if they do, we'll know first." He glanced back over his shoulder. The salt flats stretched like an ocean, endless and still. They moved silently, every step measured. The unconscious threat of the vault beneath the surface weighed on Kale, a low thrum in his chest that matched the girl's subtle energy. He could feel the young woman's awareness, fragile but expanding, aligning with Sari's presence. She wasn't just alive, she was learning, adapting. Their combined life force pulsed through him in tiny bursts, synchronizing with the rhythms of the desert night. Kale exhaled slowly, adjusting the pack across his shoulders. He had survived wars and betrayals, but nothing had prepared him for this, guiding two survivors across a living landscape that watched their every movement. Hours passed as they followed the ravine's edge. The shadows of jagged rock stretched like fingers across the sand, and the wind shifted, carrying the faint scent of iron and dust. The girls remained close, moving like wraiths in the darkness. Every so often, Kale paused to check the horizon, sensing the faint resonance of the vault's memory echoing beneath the earth. It wasn't aggressive, at least not yet, but it pulsed with awareness, a silent reminder that they had left something alive behind. "Kale," Sari said softly, "do you think it forgives us?" He looked down at her, surprised by the question. "Forgive what?" "Breaking the seal. Waking her." The young girl's golden eyes reflected starlight as she followed Sari's gaze. Kale's jaw tightened. "I don't know," he admitted. "I hope it understands mercy, but it's not human. Forgiveness might be too much to ask." Sari's lips pressed together. "We'll teach it then." By the time they reached the ravine, faint traces of first light streaked the horizon. Kale found a shallow cave, partly hidden behind jagged boulders. The mouth was narrow, perfect for concealment. He laid the young woman on a bed of cloth salvaged from his pack, careful not to jostle her. Sari crouched beside her, whispering softly, tracing protective symbols in the sand near her sister. Kale watched, noticing the rhythm, the way her hands moved in sync with the subtle pulses beneath the girl's skin. They weren't just gestures, they were guidance, control, teaching without words. Kale sat against the cool stone wall, scanning the ridge above for any signs of movement. The flats were quiet now, unnaturally so, as if the desert itself held its breath. He rubbed at his temples. This was supposed to be simple, he muttered. Just grab her, move north, survive the raiders. Instead, he trailed off. Sari glanced at him. Instead what? He shook his head. Instead, we're carrying a god through the desert. She tilted her head. I told you she wasn't ordinary. The young woman stirred, eyelids fluttering. Kale rose quickly, brushing his hands on his trousers. Sari grabbed his arm. Wait, she said. Not yet. Let her remember slowly. Kale exhaled and sat back down. The hum beneath the vault had faded to near silence, replaced by the subtle pulse from her awakening energy. It was weak but steady, expanding with each breath she took. Do you feel it? Kale asked Sari. She nodded, eyes focused on the girl. She remembers fragments, Sari said. Small things, not enough to overwhelm her. Fragments of what? The seal. The vault. The wars. The power they tried to bury inside her. Kale exhaled. Then we keep it small. Controlled. Sari glanced at him. You're the strategist now. For tonight, he said. Hours passed. The sun rose fully, warming the stone walls. The girls remained still, the older one gaining consciousness slowly, golden eyes blinking, pupils adjusting to the light. Kale knelt beside her. Easy now, he said softly. She took in shallow breaths. Sari's hand remained on her shoulder, grounding her. Kale noticed the faint glow beneath her skin, soft, blue, and rhythmic, pulsing with life. You're awake, he said. Safe for now. The girl's voice came in a whisper. Where? Kale smiled faintly. Safe. For a while. She tried to sit fully, wobbled, then leaned on Sari. I remember, she said, voice trembling. Sari's hand tightened gently. Slowly, she said. Take it slowly. Kale looked around the cave. The walls were etched with faint alien markings, remnants of forgotten research, a reminder that the world outside had always been stranger than he'd imagined. Kale ran a hand across the stone floor, feeling the pulse beneath his feet, the faint echo of the vault. It was distant but perceptible, like a heartbeat slowed to a rhythm. We can't stay here, he said. Not for long. The signal will reach the wrong ears. Sari nodded, standing slowly. We move after she's stronger, Kale continued. We find shelter farther north. Somewhere, quiet. Somewhere the vault can't follow. The older girl looked at Kale, her eyes bright and fearful. I saw it, she whispered. The thing beneath, it's alive. Kale swallowed. Yes, he said. It remembers. But you're stronger now. You've learned mercy. Her gaze shifted to Sari. And her. She's your anchor, Sari said. Together, you'll survive. Kale nodded. I'll guide both of you, as long as I can. By noon, the cave was bathed in light. Kale scavenged nearby for shade and water, finding a small pool beneath overhanging rock. He drew it carefully, letting the girls drink first. Sari watched him intently. You always know what to do, she said. Kale smiled faintly. Not always. Just when it matters. The girls rested while Kale set up a rudimentary defense. Rocks stacked at the cave entrance, crude but functional, with the wreckage of his pack reinforcing weak points. If someone comes, he said, we're ready. Sari's gaze hardened. No one will come. We hope, Kale replied. Late afternoon brought distant echoes, wings of wind carrying faint metallic vibrations. Kale froze. Do you hear that? Sari's eyes narrowed. The desert remembers, she said quietly. Not just the sand. The vault. All of it. Kale gritted his teeth. Then we prepare. The girls positioned themselves beside him. He handed Sari the spear. Stay sharp. Protect her. Protect each other. As dusk approached, the shadows deepened. Kale stood at the cave entrance, scanning the flats, the sun dipping low. Golden light reflected off the salt flats like fire. They'll come, Sari said. We'll be ready, Kale replied. The pulse beneath their feet grew, not threatening, but alive. The young woman stirred, testing her legs, then focusing on the glow beneath her skin. Kale exhaled. Good. That means she remembers, but controlled. The trio moved silently across the flats, the wind carrying faint echoes of past battles and lost civilizations. Kale's mind raced with strategy and worry. Every shadow could be a threat, every shimmer a signal. But for the first time, he felt the smallest shred of hope, the knowledge that together they could face whatever waited. The sun disappeared behind the horizon. The moon rose, twin silvery disks reflecting in the salt, and the desert fell quiet, alive only with the pulse beneath their feet and the faint glow of the young woman's energy. Kale glanced at the girls, then back toward the canyon they had left. This is just the beginning, he said softly. Sari nodded. We'll see it through. The desert exhaled around them. Somewhere deep beneath the sands, a memory stirred, a shard of the vault, faint but persistent, watching, learning, waiting. Kale felt it beneath his boots, a reminder that the unknown was not gone. But for now, the girls were safe, the desert quiet, and the future still theirs to shape. And so they walked, together, across the flats, shadows long, hearts steady, into the coming night. The twin moons hung low over the salt flats, pale silver light reflecting across fractured crystal surfaces and jagged rock outcroppings. Kale led the group forward, every step careful, measured, but deliberate. The young woman's golden eyes flickered faintly with residual energy, the hum beneath her skin soft but persistent. Sari kept her spear at the ready, watching the horizon with predator-like focus, alert to every movement, every whisper of wind. The desert stretched endlessly before them, and Kale could feel the pulse of the vault's memory beneath the ground, faint but steady, a reminder of the power they had awakened and the choice they had forced upon it. Hours passed as they moved through shadow and moonlight. Kale guided them along narrow ridges and hidden dips in the flats, ensuring that the young woman remained shielded from sight. He could feel the pulse of energy beneath their feet, synchronized now with the girl's own, stable and growing under Sari's careful influence. She was learning control, learning restraint, and each careful breath helped anchor the power that could have destroyed them all. Kale glanced at Sari, noting how even the smallest gestures, tilt of her head, a grip of her hand, channeled strength and calm into the young girl beside her. By dawn, they reached a small canyon. Its jagged cliffs offered shelter and concealment. Kale guided the girls into its shadow, the sun rising behind them, painting the flats in deep golds and muted reds. He lowered the young woman gently, letting her feet touch the rough, warm stone. Sari knelt beside her sister, whispering softly, laying protective hands on her shoulders. Kale watched, letting the weight of recent events settle, the pulse beneath their feet now almost imperceptible. The danger of the vault was still there, but contained for the moment. We need a plan, Kale said quietly. They'll come for her. Someone always does. Sari's gaze sharpened. We won't give them the chance. Not if we control the flow, he said. The vault's memory is alive beneath us. It'll know if anyone tries to follow. But we can use that to our advantage. The girls exchanged a look, one of understanding, one that required no words. Kale could feel the unspoken bond forming between them, teacher, protector, survivor. Kale scavenged a small area of the canyon floor, gathering rocks and debris to create rudimentary defensive structures. Sari assisted, dragging her spear along the stone to wedge it securely, creating a barrier without drawing attention. The young woman watched, learning, following every instruction. Kale's thoughts drifted to the seal, the vault, the energy they had just wrestled. The golden glow beneath her skin pulsed softly, calm but aware. He could feel the awareness in the sand, the lingering memory beneath the rocks. He was no longer sure where her control ended and the vault's influence began. Midday came. Kale rested briefly, leaning against a jagged wall. The heat of the sun baked the flats outside, but the canyon remained cool and shadowed. The young woman sat beside Sari, golden eyes tracking every movement Kale made. "She's stronger than I expected," Kale said, noticing the subtle shifts in her posture, the way her body maintained balance. "She's learning," Sari replied. "Faster than I thought she could. She won't be a child for long." Kale exhaled. "Good. She needs to survive what's coming." The sun began to descend again, shadows lengthening across the canyon floor. Kale knew they had only a few hours before the desert's predators, human, alien, or otherwise, would begin their patrols. He turned to Sari. "We leave soon. Take her out, across the flats, to the outpost farther north. The one we spotted near the ravine's edge." "And if someone follows?" she asked. "Then we guide them. The vault's memory is ours now, controlled, restrained. It will alert us before they arrive." Sari nodded. The young woman shifted, golden eyes meeting Kale's. "I understand," she said softly. "I will stay with her. I will protect her." Kale smiled faintly. "Then we move together." He gathered the two girls, their combined weight manageable but heavy. He adjusted his pack and spear, ensuring every movement minimized exposure. Sari led the way, spear raised, scanning every inch of terrain. The young woman followed, cautious but steady, learning from every step. As they reached the canyon's mouth, the salt flats spread before them, pale and infinite. Kale could feel the pulse beneath them again, distant, faint, but aware. The sands remembered every step they had taken, every burst of energy released. It would warn them of danger long before raiders or scavengers approached. "Stay close," Kale said. "Do not scatter. Keep your rhythm steady." They nodded, stepping carefully onto the flats, moving as one unit, synchronized in motion and energy. Night fell. The twin moons rose over the horizon, silver light casting long, eerie shadows across the flat. Kale set up a small fire using plasma shards from his pack, the flame low, blue, contained. The young woman and Sari sat beside him, their bodies tense, ears alert to every sound. Kale's mind raced, mapping possible paths, potential threats, and contingencies for every situation. Despite the exhaustion, he felt a clarity he had not known in years. Responsibility sharpened thought. Survival focused it. From the distance, faint red flickers appeared on the horizon, signs that others might have traced their path. Kale didn't flinch. "The vault will give us early warning," he said. "But we can't waste time." Sari tightened her grip on her spear. "We move west at first light. Avoid the ridges and flats. Use the shadows and the dunes." Kale nodded. "Agreed. And keep the girl's rhythm aligned with ours. She's part of the flow now. If she falters, the vault notices. We cannot risk it." The night passed in tense silence. Kale stayed awake, watching, listening to the faint hum beneath his feet, the pulse of energy intertwined with the young woman's own. Sari whispered instructions to her sister, adjusting posture, controlling breathing, subtle commands that harmonized with the energy surrounding them. Kale marveled at her instinctive coordination, noting how perfectly her movements synchronized the young woman's pulses with the underlying memory of the vault. Dawn approached. The moon's glow faded, replaced by the first streaks of sunlight. Kale gave the signal. "Move." The three of them advanced, silent and swift, shadow and body moving as one. The flats reflected the growing light, but the ridge provided cover, the wind carrying their presence outward to confuse any distant observer. Kale led the formation, spear of the older girl resting lightly across his shoulder. Sari adjusted the younger one's balance, teaching her how to move efficiently across the uneven terrain. As they neared the outpost, the ruins of old machinery and partially buried shelters provided both concealment and a potential resource for survival. Kale scouted ahead briefly, confirming no immediate threats. The girls followed, their energy synchronized, their presence amplified by the subtle pulse that connected them all. The young woman's glow had stabilized, calm, aware, guided. Kale exhaled. For the first time in weeks, he allowed a fraction of relief. They reached the outpost's main structure, a half-buried building with reinforced metal walls. Kale guided them inside, using old control panels to check for energy or communication signals. Faint lights flickered, indicating minimal power. He set up temporary shelters, water recycling units, and low energy lights for warmth and visibility. The girls settled, exhausted but alert. Kale inspected their surroundings, ensuring that entry points were minimal and any potential approach was visible well in advance. The young woman shifted, golden eyes tracking Kale. "Where now?" she asked softly. "Now." Kale smiled faintly. "Now we recover. Rest. Learn to survive here. Prepare for the next steps. We have only won a pause, not the war." Sari nodded. "And she?" Kale gestured toward the young woman. "She will learn control. One step at a time. She will be ready when the vault, or anything else, tries to take notice again." The hours passed. The suns climbed, casting long shadows, light glinting off metal surfaces inside the outpost. Kale monitored the perimeter, scanning for energy fluctuations beneath the floor, ensuring the pulse of life beneath them remained steady. The young woman practiced subtle control of her glow under Sari's guidance, focusing on balance and rhythm. Kale watched them, aware that he had never witnessed such rapid adaptation, such synchronization of life, energy, and intention. By evening, the air cooled. The girls sat beside him. Kale placed a hand on the younger one's shoulder. "You did well today," he said. "You kept your rhythm steady, your energy controlled." She looked at him, eyes glowing faintly. "We all did," she said. Sari smiled faintly, brushing dust from her sister's hair. "You have the pulse," she said. "The control. You are learning." Kale nodded. He felt the faintest tug in the sand beneath his boots, a subtle reminder that the vault, though dormant, was still alive. They sat in silence as night fell. The twin moons reflected in the flats beyond, illuminating the outpost with silver light. Kale felt the energy pulse beneath his feet, synchronized now with the young woman, amplified by Sari's presence, calm and steady. The desert itself seemed to exhale, watching, aware, but yielding to the three humans who had survived and guided life where destruction had once ruled. Kale finally allowed himself to relax slightly. The world was quiet, safe for the moment. The girls rested beside him, their breathing steady. The pulse beneath the floor persisted, gentle, alive, but non-threatening, a promise that the past had been contained, for now, by understanding, guidance, and the persistence of life. Dawn approached, twin moons fading into the rising sun. Kale gazed out over the flats. The vault's distant hum was faint, barely perceptible. For the first time, he felt that the desert's memory had been altered, not destroyed, not erased, but tempered, guided by choice, mercy, and care. The young woman stirred beside Sari, the two forming a silent bond, golden eyes flickering with the first glimmers of comprehension and control. Kale smiled faintly. "We did it," he said quietly. "Together." Sari's hand found his, a small gesture, but filled with unspoken gratitude. The young woman's pulse synchronized fully now with theirs, her glow steady and calm. They were alive. The vault was dormant, altered, tempered. The world remained harsh, but for now, they had claimed a moment of peace. The desert wind carried their steps forward. The outpost hummed faintly with residual life. The sun climbed higher. Shadows receded. And somewhere deep beneath the salt flats, the pulse of memory remained, waiting but transformed, a reminder that life, human, alien, or otherwise, could endure, adapt, and teach even the oldest powers to listen. They walked together into the rising sun, three survivors of impossible trials, hearts steady, eyes alert, ready for whatever came next.